You're listening to another great podcast in the MyMac Podcasting Network.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the show where we take a wander around the week in Apple news, reviews, technology, associated products, and all sorts of other things that catch our eye. This is another episode of the Essential Apple Podcast. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another Essential Apple. This week I am joined by Nick Riley. Hello, Nick.
Hi, Simon. Good to be back again.
Thank you. Yes, glad to have you. Well, after last week's slow week that wasn't, this week we have a slow week that was, to be honest. Not a lot going on, at least on the Apple front.
I suppose when you think about it, Apple released so much stuff over the last over the last month or so that there's bound not to be that many stories because they're busy trying to deliver everything they said they would.
Yeah, pretty much. I suspect it will now be fairly sluggish until until we get to the run up to WWDC.
Yeah,
and then,
yeah.
Then
Right.
the rumor mill will fire up, and we'll be, all those articles that say things like everything we know about what will be at WWDC, and and you go,
yes,
oh.
Everything that wasn't upgraded the last time.
What we think Apple are going to do. Oh, shut up. Well, there we go. Well, this week, what we did get was Apple apparently are now going to offer free data migrations with a new Mac purchase or repair. Apparently they charged for this before.
It's good that they're offering it for free.
Yes,
that seemed a positive step forward. As we were discussing before the show, I don't think either of us would bother using that service. But if you're new to the Mac,
yes,
that might be quite valuable.
It might be. It says
it does say right at the end, of course, that it could take quite a long time.
Yes,
be prepared to wait.
Yeah. Apparently, they charged $99 previously, which is
quite a lot, really.
Seems a bit steep, to be honest.
But I suppose when you think about it, it's probably at least an hour's work, isn't it?
Yeah.
Transfer. I mean, when I say work, I mean it's an hour letting the machine do whatever it's doing to suck the data off the other machine.
Depends how fast the machines are and how much stuff you've got to migrate, I guess.
That's true. That's true.
Well, yes, what does it say here? Beginning on April the 2nd, there will be no cost for data migrations with the purchase of a new Mac. Well, yeah, to be honest, when you're paying, probably over $1,000,
yeah,
it only seems fair.
Probably about twice what you'd normally spend on a PC.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, depending on what quality of PC you're going for, of course. But if you're the average Joe, you probably would bulk at spending over £1,000 on a standard PC because you could probably get a powerful enough machine for about £500 without any doubt, really. So.
Very much so. Interestingly enough, actually, as it happened, as such things do, my father started having problems with he got a Samsung Windows laptop, which I gave him several years ago when his Mac died. He had Mac laptops before that, and his Mac laptop went poof, and so me and my wife gave him. We had this Samsung Windows PC, which we thought, right, well, we don't have the money to buy him a Mac, and he didn't really want to buy a Mac, and so we gave him this Samsung Windows PC, which is perfectly adequate for what he wanted to do. I mean, surf the net, go on eBay, that sort of thing, email, watch YouTube, nothing very strenuous. And I can't remember how long he's had it, but he's had it a long time. And the other day he was saying to me, it's getting unresponsive. So I went round and I ran Malwarebytes and I ran Avira, and that all came up clean. And it seemed to be all right. So I said, well, it seems to be all right now, Dad. And then the next day, he says, doing it again, Si, doing it again. So I said, well, what's it doing? And he says, well, like I'm on on a web page, and I press the down arrow for it to move, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't, and then I hit the button 2 or 3 times, and then it suddenly wakes up and scrolls all the way to the bottom of the page, and like, okay, Dad, okay. And then my brother went round and ran some kind of PC cleaner program, which appeared to fix it temporarily, but that only worked for about 2 or 3 days, and it was doing it again. So I said, I think you might have to, bite the bullet, Dad, and think about replacing it. I mean, it is old. I don't know how old it is. I think I looked at it, and it when I got it back home, and it was about 10 years old. So
Oh, that's quite old.
Yeah, it's quite old. I mean, it was quite a good PC, in its day. So it's done well, on light duties. So
yeah, I mean, I've got a really, well, I say I've got it down at church at the moment, but I bought a one of these through the company. The company were able to get what's the word I'm after?
When you get a discount.
Yeah, you buy it through your salary basically, so that you'd save on tax and stuff like that, so this is going back quite a number of years. And it was fine. It was a Sony that I bought, and it was great. It worked very well for a long time, and then I sort of stopped using it as much. And then I tried to upgrade it with Windows 7, I think it was, and oh no, the drivers just wouldn't play ball. And in the end, I just thought, I'm going to stick Linux on it.
Yeah, well,
and so it's got a version of Linux on it. So if we ever did need it for doing whatever, it's down there, and it's fairly easy to use and quick.
So I said to him, well, you might need to. I mean, I think the Samsung came originally with Vista, and then
right,
that's how. Yeah, it came with Vista, and then I upgraded it, I think, to Windows 7, then 8.1. And then 10. So I mean, it's had a good life. And this is the thing. I think that if budget PCs come in a variety of kinds, and if you buy, I found in my time, if you buy something like an Acer or an Asus or one of those, if you get 3 years out of it, you're doing well. They're cheap. They're cheap and cheerful, but what often happens is they just start to fall apart, literally, because they're made out of all plastic and.
Yes.
Well, you get what you pay for. They're
indeed you do.
They're often, they're cheap and cheerful, but they often only last 2 or 3 years. Anyway, if you buy something like a Sony or Samsung, well, I mean, Sony don't make PCs anymore, do they? But the ones they used to make, Sony PCs, particularly their laptop, I know their Vios were in a similar bracket to a MacBook or a MacBook.
Oh, they were. Yes, it wasn't cheap. It's only because I was buying it over a couple of years, and
they were not.
It worked out as very competitive that way, but
yeah, so exactly. But again, if you get what you pay for, you buy a more expensive PC, and you can expect to get fairly good lifetime out of it, sort of Mac lifetime if you're careful with it. Anyway, so I said to him, you might have to buy a newer machine. So he's like, how much money is it going to cost me? I said, well, he said, I'll go down to the local. There's a place here called the Trade In, which is a sort of it's like an independent pawnbroker / entertainment exchange type place they have.
Oh right, yeah.
It's independently run by a guy, and it's a very good place actually. Don't get me wrong. He gives good price, fair prices for stuff he trade in, and he doesn't overcharge you on stuff he sells out. I quite rate him, but obviously my dad knows nothing really. So I said he was going to rush down there and buy a PC, and I said, "Don't do that, Dad. Don't do that. Let me have a look on Amazon or eBay and see what we can turn up." So I had to dig around, and I found some refurbished HP Elite books.
Oh, not heard of those.
They're quite good. They're sort of mid-range business machines, really. Anyway, this was a 13-inch, 8 or 13 or 14-inch HP Elite book, i5, 4 gig of RAM, reasonable hard drive. About £230.
Oh, that sounds good.
Obviously a few years old, but perfectly adequate for what he wants. I mean, a jump from a Pentium to an i5 is a big step up. His only loss is going down from a 15-inch screen to a smaller screen. But So he decided. I gave him a selection. I found a bunch, and they ranged from about £229 to about 350. And I
Mhm.
said, any of those will do you, really, Dad. Any of those will do you. So he bought this one for about 230 quid, I think. And it came, and then he gave it to me and said, "Can you set it up for me?" And I have to say, it was very good. It came. It was completely clean, in very nice nick. Came with a new OEM license for Windows 10, with a thing, with a certificate saying OEM license for refurbished machines.
Oh, okay.
Guarantee that it's all kosher. So I set that up for him, and it's very, very nice. It's quite interesting that on the bottom of it, it's got like a SCSI connector. I'm sure it's not for SCSI, but like we were talking about those plugged together modules.
Yes, yeah.
It's got an edge connector underneath, and I'm assuming that's there must be some kind of dock.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
That
yeah.
that because as a business machine, I'm wondering if it came with originally it's meant to be docked into a foot plate to connect to bigger monitors and whatnot. Anyway, all that.
That sounds like it.
Yeah, so that was a very nice machine, and £230. So yeah, you don't have to spend a lot of money. So anyway, I brought the old Samsung home, and I thought, well, I'll clean it out, and maybe sort of do a reset on the Windows, and I tried to do that, and it failed miserably.
Oh, right.
And I thought, I'm not sure about this. So then I thought, I know, I'll install Ubuntu as a dual boot.
Yeah.
And that failed as well. It got like halfway through and said unable to finish completing, making a partition or whatever it was.
Oh, it sounds like the hard drive's on its way out.
I thought, yeah, the hard drive's going, I think. So I whipped the hard drive out. The one thing you can say about those sort of PCs is that you just open a little hatch and pull it out. So I put another hard drive in that I had laying around, and of course then I don't have a Windows 10 installer, and it was, as I say, it'd been upgraded from wherever. You couldn't put Windows 10 on it again because then it would be unlicensed, and I don't want to pay it either. So I put Ubuntu on it. I went for Ubuntu 19.
Right. Yeah, I think I've got Ubuntu on the machine down at church. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, I like Ubuntu. It's one of the. I know.
It's quite sort of Windows-like, really, isn't it? It's fairly. It's got a menu on the side, and
depends which one you go for, because you can have Ubuntu with or it varies. I tend to use GNOME Flashback, which is very stripped down.
Oh, right.
They do a KDE version, which is very much designed to emulate Windows. The default now is their own version of GNOME, which is meant to be more Mac-like. I go for GNOME Flashback personally because that's very simplified. But anyway, be that as it may, so I put a new hard drive in it. I put Ubuntu 1904, which is like final beta or something, because it's released in a couple of days' time, I think, officially.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then it was all fine. And what I was surprised at, although I've been putting Ubuntu on machines for some time, as I said some time ago, I had an old white MacBook, and I put a version of Ubuntu 16 or something, 1604 or something on it. But even then, I was surprised at how much more user friendly it's become. And also,
without a doubt. Because at one time you had to be a real geek to put any kind of Linux on.
Well, you did, yes, yeah.
But no, modern Linux releases are quite Mac-like, as you say, or I suppose PCs like in some ways.
Yeah, well, they're very.
You literally just kick them off and away they go, and eventually you have an operating system.
And I thought, right, I'll have a play here. And they've now. You used to have the Ubuntu store, which was a bit like the Mac App Store, and you could type things in and whatnot. But some of that was still a little bit clunky. Yeah, you'd get deb packages downloaded and things that you had to expand and whatnot. But now they have a technology. Linux has got a new technology called. Well, I don't know how new it is, but they have a thing called Snap.
Okay.
This is their new technology, which I think the whole point of it is it's a cross distro technology. So you don't have all this thing about RPM and deb and is it in the Ubuntu repository and all the rest and this apt-get and blah. You just go to the software and it brings up like a Mac App Store type thing, and then you just type in what you want and it will show you if it's available as a Snap app, and a Snap app literally just downloads. That's it, straight in.
That's a lot more straightforward, isn't it?
Yes, that's lovely. And I thought, okay, well, what shall I put? So I went, Skype. Now I know Skype's been available on Linux forever, so I put on Skype. Just put Skype. There it is. You just click install. It just goes installing. Done. You click launch. And then I went, okay, I'll do Proton Mail, and Wire, and Clicks browser. And
it's one of the nice things, isn't it, about computers these days? I mean, is that most software is available for multiple devices on different OSs.
Yes.
So even I mean, one of the things I liked about moving to the Mac was so my first Mac was an Intel one, and straight away a lot of the software that I'd been using on my PC was available for the Mac.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say, "Oh, no, Macs are so different to PCs," but in all honesty, yes, they operate a little bit differently. But software-wise, you can almost get exactly the same stuff no matter where you are. Obviously, you're not going to get the Apple stuff on other devices. Well, at the moment, but who knows the way that Apple are going at the moment?
Who knows? So yeah, I was really surprised, and I thought, I went to Proton. I thought, well, can I install the Proton Mail bridge? And I typed that in, and there was a thing, no. So I went to the Proton Mail site and clicked bridge, and then it said download for Windows, download for Mac, or iOS, or whatever. That's not for iOS, but so I clicked on it, and it said Linux. So I thought, oh, okay. So I clicked on that. It says if you're currently in beta, if you want to sign up for the beta, send an email to Proton Mail Bridge Linux or whatever it was. So I did that, and about 2 hours later, I got an email saying, here's a link, and we will actually soon be adding the link directly to the page.
Oh, cool.
So that's that. Yeah, obviously there's no Adobe, there's no there's no Microsoft Office.
No. But you can get stuff done.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously,
and of course the advantage with Linux was always that it would run on pretty lowly hardware, so you didn't have to go for something that was incredibly powerful and cost a lot of money. So
it's,
kudos to Linux, I say.
Yeah, very much so. I've been a big fan of, I've played with other distros in the past, but I always end up coming back to Ubuntu just for ease of use, really. Especially if you're going to give it to somebody, I gave it to my son and said, right, you do realise this isn't Windows, this is different. The only thing he's a bit miffed about at the minute is there's some Flash games online he can't get to work. I put Flash on it. You can install Flash on it, but some of the sites he went to didn't want to play ball. But he mostly wants it to watch YouTube and stuff. So
you tend to forget, don't you, how tech savvy kids are these days. So I think I've told you before, I gave my MacBook Air to my niece. And I said, so if you need any help setting it up and whatever, and before I knew it, she was doing stuff on it within seconds of her opening it. And I thought, okay, I'll just shut up.
Well, I think the other thing is those of us who've been doing computing on different platforms for decades, is that we still kind of often think of it in the way that when we started out, where Windows was Windows and Mac was Mac, and Linux was barely viable with, when I started, there was no Linux, but when Linux first came along, it really was a geeky, very creaky, but over time, everybody steals from everybody else, and everybody copies the best bits and drops the bad bits, and to be honest,
they actually start to look a bit like one another.
They're all much of a muchness now, aren't they?
Yeah.
The days when Apple didn't have a right click are long, long gone, and
yes,
so there you go. So that was that, and then bizarrely, my sister emailed me and said, "So I'm thinking of getting a computer because I want one for my university work, because she's optometrist, and
right, yeah."
She said, "Oh, I keep using my son's and he's getting the So she said to me, "Oh, I was, I don't really know what to get." So she sent me a thing. Said, "I was looking at this one, Dell Inspiron or something. It was about £600." And I said to her, "I'm not really sure you need that much power. I don't think you really need to spend that much money." And again, I went on Amazon. I found her. I think it was another HP Elite book, but a bit higher spec than the one. It was still an i5. It was an i5, 8 gig of RAM with an SSD. and I
Yeah.
think that was about £350, which he said,
And
"Oh, I'll buy
Hewlett
that."
Packards aren't bad. They're
No,
not bad machines at all.
no, very
Um,
good machine. So she bought that and said, "Oh, thanks, Si. That's just saved me about 250 quid, you know." But
Yeah.
and perfectly adequate for what she wants to do, obviously. Well,
Probably good.
there we
I
go.
hope you're being paid for all this consultancy work.
Yeah, I reckon. Well, look, we've gone down a rabbit hole there, haven't we?
We have a little bit, but
Never
never mind.
mind.
There isn't that much story. So
That's true. There's not that much story. So what was the other one? Apple have added a confirm subscription step for in-app subscription sign-ups on iOS. This is everywhere. The story I've linked is on 9 to 5 Mac, but about time, I say so. What about?
yeah, I can't say that I've ever subscribed by accident personally, but apparently it's quite easy to do. So
Well, it was the trouble is the original concept of subscriptions, of course, was fairly straightforward. Do you want to subscribe to this app, and it's so much a month, and that's the end of it.
yeah,
But my daughter got caught out where she downloaded I don't know what it was, a meditation app or a mindfulness app. And it said download for free or whatnot, and she downloaded it, and of course what it didn't make clear, or was hidden away in the thing, was that free for 7 days, and then unless you cancel, you will automatically be signed up for the $100 yearly subscription.
yeah, that's bad, isn't it? I really think that it's about time we banned anything that does that. You know what I mean? We shouldn't really allow companies to say, yeah, you can sign up and get a free copy, and then that auto subscription, they just shouldn't be able to do it.
No. So, I got a thing on my iTunes bill saying you owe us $100. It's like, what? So I got onto Apple about it and said, look, this is what's happened. She signed up for this thing, didn't realise it was an expensive subscription. I mean, they refunded my money, but it took a week for the money to come back, via.
Yes, yeah.
But so Apple have now put in a step which basically, if you click on something which includes a subscription, whether it's made clear or not, you will now get are you really sure that you want to sign up for this subscription? Which basically, I guess, is, yes, eliminating the sneaky subscription shenanigans, because if you didn't realise it, you'll get a thing saying this includes a subscription, are you sure? So that's good. Well done,
Yes.
Apple. It should have been in there previously, I think. But of course, I suspect that's one of those things. They introduced subscriptions in all good faith, and people don't think about how underhand some people can get.
No, unfortunately not.
So there we go. The other couple of pieces we've got here is AirPods and shortcuts have shifted Apple's Siri story and blunted Amazon's Alexa Echo threat, which is a very long title.
It certainly is.
On Apple Insider, this is an opinion piece, basically saying that they believe that the AirPods and the Siri shortcuts are, tackling the risk, that Alexa is going to take over the whole voice assistant arena.
Interesting idea.
Actually, from what I'll be fair, from what I read in some of the places I follow and Tech Pinions and people like that, they seem to believe that actually, despite the initial apparent dominance of Echo and Alexa, actually Google Home is getting more traction.
Okay, that's interesting.
That in the longer term, they think that Amazon don't have enough reach. But these things, if everybody has an opinion, I mean,
yeah, it talks quite a lot about that Amazon's plan was originally to make it easier for people to buy things, which is not surprising considering they're Amazon. But I don't think as many people as they'd hoped actually use. I mean, the fact is, would you trust buying something by saying, "Oh, buy some of this," without actually seeing it? Or
people bring that up all the time, and I think the only way that I would imagine anybody doing that is if you have one of these, if you have something that you always buy from Amazon, and
yes, and it's a recurring thing,
and you probably buy it in bulk, like, send me a case of coffee, or deliver my toilet paper. If
Yeah,
you're one of these,
4.5 tons of toilet paper or something. Yeah.
yeah, if you're one of these people who orders, 2 gross of toilet rolls to be delivered from Amazon, then I could imagine maybe you would go, hey, lady, please order more toilet rolls, and that would just be a stock,
Yeah,
and it would
maybe
know
so.
it would
I
know
mean,
what one. But
in all honesty, I make enough mistakes buying stuff from Amazon as it is, and
yeah,
without asking for it, and not really knowing quite what I'm asking for.
no, I don't.
I bought. So I've been keeping Amazon afloat personally during the last few weeks with all this stuff I've been buying for church.
Yeah, with all your
and sending back to them. But I bought a new radio microphone for church, and unfortunately, it's on a different frequency range than our receivers that we've got at church. But it has got its own receiver, but it's got a jack plug on it, and we haven't got a jack plug. So I thought, oh, no problem. I'll buy a jack plug to XLR microphone connection without properly checking what it had got to plug into. And it arrived on Friday, and I took it down to church on Saturday and tried to plug it in. I thought, why won't it go in? And then I noticed that actually it's 2 male connections.
Oh dear.
And I just brought the wrong thing again.
Well, I mean, it's not difficult to do. I mean, my wife was given a set of headphones, the big old cans.
Oh, yeah.
Old, sort of, I don't know, they're probably late 70s, 80s, vintage, good quality, over ear, headphones. But of course, they come with a 1/4-inch jack.
Of course they do.
From the days when we used to have big, chunky, great things like guitar socket plugs. And so she went on Amazon and looked for 1/4-inch, jack plug converter. And there are millions on there. And she bought a box. It says, box of 5 jack plug converters. It was about £3.50 or something stupid. So she ordered them. What she had failed to do was check which ones they were. And when they arrived, they were 3.5 to 1/4-inch.
They were the wrong way round.
They were exactly the wrong way round. And what she actually wanted...
Well, that's effectively what I've done. So
yeah, so
it's easily done.
Easily done because So then I said to her, no, you don't want those. You need the other way round, which is 1/4-inch to 3.5.
Well, you can imagine trying to do something like that on a voice, through your voice. I mean, you'd have to be so specific, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yes. Order me a female 1/4-inch jack plug to female XLR microphone input socket. I know what Alexa's going to say. I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
So, yes. Anyway, going back to it. Yes. I mean, the one thing Alexa does seem to have become very popular with, of course, is the smart home stuff, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, without a doubt.
Light bulbs and switches and all that sort of thing.
Yes, as you know, I'm an Amazon household when it comes to automation. And I mean, in all honesty, it works pretty well most of the time. I do, like most of these things, you do occasionally have to give it a good dressing down and tell it to stop being stupid. Not that I'm stupid at all, ever, of course.
Well, there we go. So anyway, what did it say here? It says, Alexa's voice assistant involves some impressive technology, and along with a variety of similar services, such as Cortana, Bixby, all were created in the original Siri model. And in some ways, Alexa and other voice services made Siri look embarrassingly antiquated. I have to say that...
To start with, that was true. Yeah. Particularly because I think I said on the last time I was on Bart's show, I asked, because I was calculating, we've talked before about me doing the church magazine, and I was just trying to calculate, we do 175 magazines, and there were, 7 pages in each magazine. So I just said, what's 7 times 175? And it said, here's some web pages that I found for you. And so I thought, what's it doing? So I said, well, hey, Sarah, I won't say the word. Hey, S lady, what's 175 times 7? And then she gave me the answer. So I thought, why could you not understand it the other way around?
Yeah, that's very bizarre, isn't it? Very bizarre.
Yeah, I've come to the conclusion because Ewan on the Big Mac show also has great problems with Siri. It's our Brummie accent she can't cope with. She said, have a posher accent and I might answer you properly.
Well, I've never had any luck with Siri. Very little. I use Siri.
And yet, if you speak to some Americans, they have no problem at all. So
No,
it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it often does not understand anything I say to it. It works if I'm using my earpiece. I press it and I say, call Jackie or call Danielle or call Dad. But that's pretty much that, and set me a timer, which I often do on my watch, to be honest. But no, and to be honest, a lot of the time, what am I going to ask it that's not quicker and easier to just look at my phone?
Yes, there is that. Yeah, that's a good point. At least with the A lady, yeah, you're quite often clumping things together. So I'll just say, time for bed, and it'll turn off my lights off and turn my TV off and do multiple things all in one go. Because, in all honesty, as you say, if you're just going to do one item for everything that you ask for, you might as well just get up and do it yourself.
Exactly. There we go. Anyway, so this is quite a long article, I have to say.
So what's the major gist of it? Are they saying that Siri's going to come into its own? Is that it?
This is long.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a very long article. I think what they're saying is that with shortcuts, I think the long and the short of it in the TLDR, is that with the with AirPods and direct access to Siri through the AirPods and the use of shortcuts, you can make Siri far more useful and.
And of course, with the latest AirPods, you don't have to tap them or anything, do you?
No,
you
they hey S.
You just say the AH word, hey S word.
Yeah, hey S lady, do this, that, and the other. So that if you're interested in that, that's I reckon that's a 6 or 7 minute read at least, maybe more.
Yeah, might be worth switching on the old what's it called? The what's it view? The reader view.
Oh yes, you want reader view for that. Yes, you'll want reader view for that.
Actually, I hardly ever use it, but it is remarkable how well it gets rid of all the rubbish. Well, most of the rubbish.
I use I use the reader view a lot, especially on the phone, because
yes, I can see how that would help. Yeah.
The other thing that it's very good for on the phone, other than simply trimming out all the cruft, when you're on the phone, is it brings it up in reasonable sized plain type,
which is good for those of us who
are of a certain age and our eyesight isn't what it used to be.
Yes.
No, it's very good, and because often, of course, on a website it will get rid of the sidebars and the headers and the footers, and not just ads, because obviously I use Crystal and AdBlock anyway. But it takes out all the spaces where the ads might have been. If you don't have that, you often get big blank spaces where the ads have been blocked. I use Reader all the time. The other thing that Reader View is very good for, and here's a handy tip: if you go to a website on your Mac and you get one of those honking great things going, do you want to do this, that, and the other, and choose what cookies you accept and all sorts of other, if you click Reader View, it will just give you the Reader View regardless. So you don't have to worry about all those, do you want cookies and GDPR announcements and all that. Just click the Reader View and it will just show you the text.
That a bit more then.
Yes, it will just, not always. Some of them are made so that they've engineered it so all you get then is the GDPR thing in Reader View. But most of the time, it will bypass that for you and allow you to skim the article without having to muck about with that. So,
jolly good public service announcement there.
Yeah, there we go. So that's a long read. I think the gist of it is they're suggesting, as the title says, that AirPods and shortcuts have made Siri much better. There we are.
Jolly good.
Another opinion piece here was on 9 to 5 Mac. An Apple Podcast Plus service could be a hit with listeners and creators. Not sure about this. I'm not sure that Apple are that interested in podcasts, to be honest.
No, I don't think they are particularly.
I mean, they created the whole format, and this 9 to 5 Mac opinion piece suggests, what does it suggest here? He says the proposition is interesting. He's talking about Apple News Plus. If you really want to read tons of magazines or content from newspapers, included in Apple News Plus, the $9.99 per month price is great value. I'm not, well, I guess if you want to read a lot of magazines that way, yes. And of course, the fact that you can share it out over your family. Right, and this is, I feel the same way about Apple News Plus. I am doing the free trial, but I'm not sure I'll keep it long term. It's not terrible value, but it's not something I want to pay $120 a year for. One thing that has been increasing, however, is my podcast listening through Apple Podcasts. I think now might be the time for Apple to consider an Apple Podcast Plus as a way to continue evolving the podcast market while building ways for shows to build a revenue stream, and keeping the market open. Now, of course, his main gist here is because he's talking about the fact that there are a whole bunch of people currently attempting to corral parts of the podcast world.
Yes, and he's saying he wants that, in his opinion, it should stay open, isn't it? But there might be some merit in it all being brought together.
Yes,
I think that's what he's saying.
I think what he's implying is that if Apple did a News Plus sort of idea where you could put your podcast into Podcast Plus and people put in a subscription to that, and then the money was divvied up amongst the podcast, pro rata to their listeners. I suppose I could see that.
A little bit like Patreon, really, isn't it? A little bit like Patreon, but built into podcasts.
Yeah. What you're saying is, I'm concerned that Spotify is attempting to do with their movement into original podcasts. The Athletic, which is somebody I've never heard of, recently announced they were venturing into original podcasts and they will be in their own app. Even though I subscribe to The Athletic, I'd prefer to listen to them in the app of my choice.
Oh, absolutely. Because you get used to a certain podcast, don't you? And I love listening to stuff through Overcast. And obviously, different people have different opinions, and we'll go for another one. But the thought of having to have multiple apps to listen to, multiple podcasts,
you're going to start.
It's not going to work, is it?
No. This podcast is now pushed out from Pinecast, our hosts. It goes to iTunes, Overcast, Google Podcasts, only available in the US, Spotify, and then I just added some more which are in a sort of a one-click thing in Pinecast, which was Radio Public, Player FM, TuneIn. And
then there's those guys that you pay to stand on the tops of large buildings with megaphones.
Yes, yes, shouting it out. So it was a one-click thing, so why not? But send it anywhere and everywhere.
Yes. I think the fact is podcasters themselves would really like a sort of centralised podcasting app that would do all this work for you.
Well,
it would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would. I mean, in our case, obviously, Pinecast, our host, provide all that. You simply do the clicks and it pumps them out there. iTunes, the repository itself, of course, is what people like Overcast and Castro and what's the other one? Pocket Casts and all the others. That's where they mostly pull their feeds from. As this guy says, in my opinion, a podcast is only a podcast if it's an RSS feed any client can use. Podcasting has been successful because of the decentralization of how media can be created and distributed. Anyone can make a show. You don't have to work at a big media firm to get started. Buy a microphone, sign up for a hosting account, and share your show. Podcast Plus service like Apple News needs to be an add-on. Podcasting works because it's free and open. Apple Podcast Plus would be an addition to Apple Podcasts. There we go.
So he's suggesting that they ought to launch something called Apple Podcasts Connect. Apple could integrate all the back-end work into Apple Podcast Connect, and that's how the money could be deposited into accounts where rewards are added, etc. It's an interesting idea.
It's an interesting concept. It's a moderately long piece. I don't know. I don't think Apple are interested enough or feel that they would probably get enough people signing up, to be honest.
No, I think podcasters would really love them to be more interested, but their past efforts have been a little lackluster, shall we say.
Yeah, and the thing is, how many people would be prepared to pay, I don't know, $5 or $10 a month to listen to podcasts when effectively you can listen to podcasts for nothing?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, at least with the Patreon service, your people are volunteering to pay the money, which is a different thing entirely, isn't it? To actually selling them is a much different proposition.
Yes, it's, if you'd like to support us and, give us a few pennies, then you're welcome to do so. I mean,
Having said that, I think that's what he's suggesting in this article. He's not suggesting that it becomes a monthly subscription, but that it becomes a mechanism to make subscriptions easier and giving people the opportunity to subscribe or not. So what he's suggesting, I think, is just bringing things together.
There's that, and I also think maybe I think he's also suggesting that perhaps Apple should step up to defend the whole podcast thing and prevent it being split up into silos. If you've got these people like The Athletic, it says here, podcasts will only be available on The Athletic's owned and operated channels and will not be accessible outside of the paywall. For example, on Spotify or Apple Music. The hope is that by keeping the podcast behind a paywall, the company will be able to attract new segments of sports fans who engage with sports differently. I don't like that idea at all. That just smacks of, well, as we said, that's not a podcast, is it? That's a paid for content on a service. That's like signing up to HBO because you want to watch Game of Thrones.
Yes, it is. It is, but for podcasts, yeah.
Yeah.
No, not a good idea, I don't think.
But as we say, Spotify and trying to muscle in on that. Somebody else is trying to muscle in on that. So there we go. That's a piece from 9 to 5. Interesting.
It'd be interesting to have some figures about how many people actually listen to podcasts, because I'm guessing in the grand scheme of things, it's probably a fairly small percentage.
Yeah, I don't know, because of course, a lot of, again, what I probably wouldn't necessarily consider to be real podcasts. But, if you listen to the radio now, the BBC, practically every radio show and every TV show
has a podcast of its own. Yeah, that's true.
Which isn't actually a podcast at all. It's just the
broadcast. Yes, it's broadcast that you can get on the internet.
It's just their material repackaged into a podcast format. Not that I don't necessarily decry that.
No,
it's like the catch-up service, isn't it? It's like,
but podcasting is it's still niche, really. I mean, if you take the word podcast out into the general people in the street, young people may know what podcasts are, but I bet you anyone over about 30 probably doesn't.
I suspect it's not as mainstream as those of us who listen to or are involved with podcasts like to think.
Yeah.
I mean, I do occasionally. I'll mention to people, well, of course, I'm going to record my podcast. Well, what's a podcast?
Yes.
What's that? Well, it's sort of like a radio show that I record and then I put it on the internet for people to listen to. Is that even a thing? It's like, yes, it's a thing. It's a big thing.
Yes, well, that's the reactions I've had as well when I talk about podcasts. So, yeah. But interesting. I'm just wondering whether, if something like Spotify and their ideas, whether it will actually make enough money to actually make it worthwhile doing, I don't know.
No, hard to say. I guess the thing is with anything like that, when something starts to move to the mainstream, there's always people who think they can corral it and money,
yes,
monetize it and feed off it, as it were. So I don't know. There's certainly some things going on which I don't think are particularly good for podcasting. Then again, I suppose if it allows people who want to do it, if you like, professionally, to move in that direction, how much damage is it doing? Because...
But I agree, except that, I mean, my only thoughts about it really are people begrudge having to pay out money to watch things. Having to pay to listen to things just seems completely alien.
Yeah.
Because we've had radio for so long, and radio's free. You just switch it on, and there it is.
And at the moment, of course, of course, what we're not, I don't suppose we're suggesting that everything would go behind a paywall, because lots of people like us and like Carl and Tim and lots of other people on the My Mac network. We just do it for the fun. We do it because we enjoy doing it. It's a hobby. It's something, and
That's right.
Tim.
Yes, I do it because I enjoy talking to you guys.
Yeah. Well, when I started, when I first took over the show, or when I was working co-hosting with Mark, and I was talking to Tim Robertson, he said, don't worry about the listening. How few people would you? He said, I work on the principle. How few people would have to listen to your show before you considered it wasn't worth the effort?
Yeah. None.
It's just like, well, as long as probably 2 people are listening to it who aren't, directly connected to me, then I guess it's fine. And he said, well, there you go.
I mean, if you get feedback that people are enjoying it, then that's it. Really, it doesn't really matter whether it's 1 or 100 or 1,000 or whatever.
Or whatever. Not at all. So. That's how I look at it, and I enjoy doing it, and I do it for the fun. It's my hobby now. It just gives me something to do. Stops me hanging around on street corners.
Oh yes, we don't want you doing that.
Oh dear. And we have one here. Card box for iOS reimagines contact management as with social features. Again from 9to5Mac. And I think Mac Jim put this in the Slack room. There was some debate about the name. Card box, dangerously like card hop. Which is quite well known. However, looking at this, it says Cardbox reimagines the address book as a social network in the purest of sense. Connect and stay connected in a central place without the noise. Now, we were talking about this before we started. A brand new take on the task of managing contacts on iOS. The goal of the app called Cardbox is to remove a lot of the details of contact management by reimagining the address book as a social network. And the idea is that you sign up to this social network for contact details. And all you have to do is manage your own contact information. To find other people in the Cardbox app, you can look them up by their name, a link, or by nearby if they are physically near to you.
So good idea if your friends have the same app.
Yeah.
Or are on the same network.
I suspect it suffers from the same old. Doesn't matter how fabulous a service it is, if nobody you wish to be contacted, in contact with is on that service, it's a bit of a dead loss. It's like, I don't use WhatsApp. But
it still seems to say that you can manage your contacts in the same way as you do with other contacts apps.
Yes, it says also syncs to the system.
Sort of social element to it.
Yeah, syncs to the contacts app on your iPhone. And as other people change their information, these changes are synced. It's a nice concept, but
I've had no end of problems with contacts over the years. Contact seems to duplicate things and lose things, and I don't know why. It could be just that I've messed it up at some point.
No, I suffer from that as well. I will suddenly open my my contacts and find that everything's got duplicated.
Or addresses disappear. Why have I not got that? I've known that person for years. Where's their address disappeared off to?
The other day, I went. I was going to iMessage Mark, and I opened iMessages on the Mac.
Yeah.
And scrolled to the bottom, and I thought, well, that's not the last conversation I had with Mark. And I thought, okay, well, I'll close iMessages and open it again, see if that'll, catch up. And it didn't. And then I opened the iMessages on my phone and scrolled down to where the conversation had finished. And then I went into the contacts app and checked that Mark was the same Mark on both. And
it's confusing.
Very weird. And then then I went into the contacts app on my phone and on the Mac, and despite the fact that everything's supposed to be in sync, there were 2 different versions of Mark, even though I know I deduplicated everything, only a week before.
I know, it's mad, isn't it?
And then eventually was
Alison Sheridan did a really good article in one of her recent shows about email and how it remembers email addresses, but they don't necessarily get copied across into your contacts. And she told how I must admit, it's something I intend to do because it sounded like a good idea. You can go into email and you can actually into Apple Mail, and you can actually find all those people that you've replied to and contacted, and that may not be in your contacts, and you can actually click through and actually add them to your contacts. And I thought that was a really useful article.
That's a useful thing to know.
Yeah.
I, as you know, listeners know, and I ride on the bleeding edge. I've noticed. I don't know when it appeared, but I noticed it yesterday as it happened. A person I've known for some time. He was involved with the Amdram Society here, and about a year ago he retired and moved to the Isle of Wight. And he emailed me to say, Simon, I'm going to be doing a production of, When We Are Married here. I've joined a new Amdram Society. It's like, really? What a surprise. But I am going to be directing, When We Are Married, and would you help me out possibly with some graphics and whatnot? Like, of course I will. So he said, I don't have your phone number. So I gave him my phone number, and he said, I'll ring you on Saturday afternoon and we'll talk about it. So he rang me, and after the call, obviously it's just in the list, isn't it? And it's just the phone number, 077 whatever. So you tap the thing, say add to contacts. So I added it to contacts, and I put in his name, and obviously the phone number's already there. And then below that, there's the Siri suggestion found in your email. Yeah. Because I've entered the guy's name, found in email, this email address. Do you want to add this to the contact sheet? Now, yes. I don't know if that's new in the beta I'm using, or it was there, because I don't add that many contacts, because basically everybody I tend to want to contact has already been in my contacts book for years. But yes. That was quite nice. It's like, it's found a probable email address, and suggested that this is an email address that might belong to this person, and do you want to add it to the contact sheet? And it was correct.
Very good.
So I went, yes, please. There we go. Yes. I mean, this is one of these things that for years people have been moaning about how iCloud is wonderful, except
where it just messes things up,
where it doesn't work properly, or suddenly does odd things. And contacts is one of the things which people complain about. And I think I mentioned, I don't know, some weeks, maybe months ago now, that my contacts went completely screwy.
Yes.
And I had to basically sign out of iCloud everywhere, then go to iCloud.com, and then go into the contacts there and clean that up and export it and delete them all and paste them back in, and it was a right mess.
Yeah, I think I've done something similar in the past. Yeah, it's too complicated. It shouldn't be that hard, really, to keep one address book up to date.
Well, it shouldn't be that difficult. I mean, if you can sync pretty much everything else effectively across iOS, I can put things in and out of the iCloud drive and whatnot, and that works, flawlessly. How can you not manage to keep it? And then
that's right.
The other one,
you should just be able to say, shouldn't you? This is my master list. This is where I want my master list to be.
You get
whether it be in the cloud or on your Mac.
Well, you get this other weird thing, don't you? If you go into contacts, you get this thing that will say, like, in iCloud, on this phone, or on this Mac, and in the cloud, and then at the top all, and it's like, why have we got all these things? Shouldn't it just be all my contacts?
Yes, it should.
Why are there different categories? I don't want different categories. This, I'm sure, is why people like Card Hop and whatnot are.
Yes, I'm sure it is.
Because
it's been interesting to see if this gains any traction. And there's one or two comments at the bottom I noticed with people saying, I'm already paying enough subscriptions. I don't want to pay another.
Well, yeah, what we got here,
it might only be a couple of dollars, but a month. But yeah,
it's a free download on the App Store. But if you wish to connect to more than 100 people through the app, there's a subscription starting at $1.99 per month.
Okay. I probably haven't got 100 in mine. In all honesty,
I think I checked mine and I've got about 120. But
right.
If you think most of those are probably people, who, and a lot of those contacts are things who would never join, they're businesses and things, so they're not relevant.
No.
So I should think, unless you're a professional contact person, a salesman or that sort of thing. How many people really have more than 100 people they need to be in touch with? So, maybe it will. But
Yeah, unless
no,
you're a business, I suppose.
I certainly, well, perhaps that's what they're aiming at, but I certainly would not, I would certainly not wish to pay for it.
No.
I might download it and have a go with it. But then, again, if nobody else uses it, it's worthless.
Yeah.
There we are. Right. Well, that's pretty much all of the Apple stories, Nick.
That's lasted quite a long time.
Well, that's because we wandered off down a few rabbit holes because we knew we
did
didn't have a lot.
indeed.
Tell you what, there's some quick technologies, and then I'm afraid there's quite a lot of sad security and privacy stories.
Uh-oh.
So let's not get too deep into some of these. I'll tell you what, shall we do the technology stories, and then we'll take a break for John Nemo, and then we'll skim over the security and privacy before we wrap it up.
Sounds good.
Okay, UK Sabre spaceplane engine tech in new milestone.
So I saw this on the BBC earlier in the week.
Yeah, this is on the BBC, and somebody put it in the Slack room, probably Mac Jim, because he puts lots of things in there. And if it wasn't Mac Jim, if it was somebody else, sorry. Now, this, for anybody who doesn't know, the Sabre spaceplane engine is a novel propulsion system. Is an air-breathing rocket engine designed to drive space planes to orbit or to take airliners around the world in a few hours. Apparently works by managing very high temperature airflows. I've no idea. That's probably way beyond my pay grade. I understand how a pulse jet works and a ramjet, and that's probably about about the limit of my knowledge.
Well, this sounds very impressive. It says it did this by successfully quenching a 420-degree centigrade stream of gases in less than 1/20th of a second. That's pretty impressive.
It's impressive.
But basically, it's a really powerful rocket, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a sort of somewhere between a rocket and a jet engine, isn't it? I think that's the point.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
What did I describe it as at the top? Air-breathing rocket. Okay, I'm not quite sure what that means. Yes, here we are. It's a cross between a jet engine and a rocket engine. At low altitude and slow speeds, it behaves like a jet, burning fuel in a stream of air scooped from the atmosphere. At high speeds and high altitude, it transitions into full rocket mode, combining the fuel with a small supply of oxygen the vehicle has carried aloft. You mean in an oxygen tank?
Yes,
Liquid
I think
oxygen.
so. Yeah.
Okay, early air-breathing approach would deliver substantial weight savings and allow a space plane to go straight to orbit without throwing away propellant stations on the way up as rockets do.
That makes sense.
Well, the space plane concept isn't new, is it? I mean, you're probably of about my age or thereabouts, Nick, and do you remember that Airfix used to have a kit of the BOAC space plane?
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that concept has been around probably since the late 60s. And they all work on this principle, aren't they? That you would take off like an aeroplane, accelerate to high speed, and get to very high altitude, and then somehow, change to a high thrust engine to push you out into low Earth orbit. And it's taken this long for anybody to actually get close to it.
Make it work.
I mean, obviously SpaceX have their Falcon Heavy, but that's basically a traditional rocket.
It is. It's very impressive. They managed to land all 3 boosters recently.
Yes, I did see that. Actually, somebody posted a link, and I'll see if I can dig it up and put it in. A guy filmed the whole thing, the launch of the Falcon Heavy, the separation of the boosters, and then coming down and doing the Dan Dare landing on their tail. Because we all know that's exactly how rockets are supposed to work. Why is it taking 50 years? We all knew that was how they were supposed to work. We all knew that was how they worked.
Well, considering I think a lot of people said that, Elon Musk was mad to even try to do this. It's quite amazing.
Well, it's quite amazing when you see
clever people he's got around him. I mean,
it was
amazing.
It is quite amazing to watch. You see those boosters come back down, flame on, little legs come out, just like in Thunderbirds.
1950s, 1960s science fiction, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
come to life.
Yeah. I mean, we've all expected rockets to work like that forever. It's only taken 50 years to make it work. No, is it Virgin? Is it Virgin Space?
Yes, Virgin have got
They're doing
SpaceX.
some.
No,
Theirs
it's
is
not
some sort
SpaceX.
of space plane, isn't it?
It is, yes.
But Virgin Galactic.
That's the one.
That's the one. And they're building some kind of space plane, aren't they, with the Dragon crew capsule? There we go. Oh, well, so there we go. Apparently, the pre-cooler seeks to solve the problem by efficiently and swiftly extracting the heat from first passing the intake gases through a tightly packed array of fine tubing, chilled with helium. And the point is apparently to prevent the extreme heat from melting the inside of the engine.
Which would be a bad thing, I suppose.
Which would be a bad thing. I'm pretty sure that if the temperature inside melts the fan blades of your engine, it's not a good. That's not a good thing.
Yeah, why are we going down?
Yeah. What's that red flashing light and a big klaxon? Don't panic. Don't panic. Okay. So that was that one. That's
cool technology.
Cool technology if you're interested in that. Also, in similarly, the world's biggest airplane takes flight for the first time ever. And this is the Strato launch rocket launching plane.
Good grief.
And it's the biggest aircraft ever. It's a weird thing, actually, because it looks like two aircraft stuck together at the wingtip.
By their wings.
Yes. As they say, a dual fuselage. Basically, it looks like two aeroplanes stuck together with the wings touching.
It's a similar sort of thing then. It's about trying to get things into orbit, isn't it?
Yes. The point of this one is it's a rocket launching plane, and the idea is that this 500,000-pound plane, a 385-foot wingspan. Damn.
That is a big plane.
That photograph does not do it justice, then, does it? Then I guess I suppose if you look, there are some people there for scale, but I guess you don't really. And we're used to seeing big things like 747s and whatnot. But anyway,
yes.
A critical first test flight for this aircraft is designed to fly to 35,000 feet, where it can then drop rockets which can ignite their engines and boost themselves into orbit round the planet. There was no rocket on this particular flight. No, well, because if you're going to test it, you probably don't want to strap on a vastly expensive rocket in case the whole thing goes horribly wrong. There we go.
We seem to be very keen to actually get things up into orbit, don't we?
Well, I think the big thing here, of course, is there's a renewed interest in putting things in orbit for a variety of reasons. And also, of course, people are starting to think, well, if we're going to keep putting stuff into orbit, we need to do it more efficiently than burning millions of tons of fuel just to get off the ground.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the biggest problem. If you can get something high enough or accelerated enough that when it fires its rocket in, because a huge amount of the fuel they burn is simply to get the damn thing to take off.
That's why the European Space Agency decided to put their launch pad on the equator, didn't they? Because it was just less distance.
Yeah.
You didn't have to use as much fuel because you were closer to the outside, as it were.
Yeah. Interestingly, just there's a sort of side thing. This Strato launch company was, I believe, originally launched by Paul Allen of Microsoft fame.
Oh, right, okay.
Who passed away recently, didn't he? Yes, he's the kind of lesser known part of Microsoft. There we go. So yeah, that's a read. Apparently, originally Strato Launch had rather loftier plans. They were going to make their own rockets and do all sorts of things, but they've scaled back after the death of Paul Allen and are concentrating on this plane. There we go. There we are. It's a very big plane and a very weird-looking thing. But yes, the concept is that I think the rockets would be slung between the fuselage, the twin fuselages. It's a bit like the X-1 rocket plane.
Yes.
From when we were kids, that was dropped, wasn't it? From it was carried up into the. It was carried up high before it was dropped.
That's right.
And then fired.
And that looked basically like a rocket with two wings on it.
Yes, exactly.
Little stubby wings on it.
Yeah. So there we go. That's that one. Then Flickr. This is a little. Flickr have teamed up with Pixie for end-to-end photo theft solution. This was on Petapixel, and there's also a link to the Flickr blog where they talk about it as well. Basically, Flickr members will be able to have their uploaded photos automatically integrated with Pixie's monitoring and protection platform, scanning the web for usages of your work, and gives you tools to handle copyright infringement, things such as registering the photos with the US Copyright Office, sending automated DMCA takedowns, if you're an American, of course, we don't have that here, but and a case resolution service for recovering lost licensing revenue.
Well, I suppose that's a good thing. I mean, there's less and less reasons to steal photos these days. I mean, we've both talked on previous shows about the fact that there are free sites that produce some very good photos that you can use.
There are plenty of sites. I've got a whole list.
So there really is no reason why we should have to use copyrighted material. It's copyright on the internet is just such a complicated thing, isn't it? Really. I mean, I think the de facto standard is if it's on the internet, it's probably copyrighted. But that's not true of some of these sites that we've mentioned, where they say, look, there are no rules. You can just use these images if you want to.
I mean, off the top of my head here, I've got if I just pop open a short list that I've got here, quick ones. freedigitalphotos.com, freephoto.com, freevector.com, free images on Pixabay, public domain pictures. I've got, Pix here, PX here. There are loads. And similarly, actually, if you want vector or clip art type stuff, again, there are huge.
At one time, it used to be quite difficult to find these pictures and things, and you really did have to search around. But there are a number of them out there now that are pretty good.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you can, got decent search engines on them, and you can often find something that's pretty close to what you want.
Yeah. Actually, as well, sometimes you can find interesting takes. So anyway, Petapixel are reporting that if you, I guess, particularly if you are a professional user and you put your stuff up on Flickr, and you're worried that people are stealing your stuff,
then they've got the tools to help.
They have the tools to help. There's a free level which I think Mac Jim, because it's Mac Jim who brought this up, because obviously he's a photographer, not a professional photographer, but obviously it's something he's very interested in. As he said, it covers 1,000 pictures for free, and then obviously there are paid levels above that. So if you're interested in that, you might wish to go and take a look. Right. Last technology story: UK train passengers to be offered smart tickets on the BBC News.
Jolly good. It's about time, really.
Yeah, about time. More rail passengers will be getting the option to use paperless tickets, the rail delivery group has said. Major stations are having the infrastructure for smart ticketing installed, with 9 in 10 journeys soon available in this format, they say. Smart tickets can be bought online and stored on smartphones or smart cards, whatever those are.
I was quite shocked, I must admit, I suppose I shouldn't be, really, but I watched one of these programs with, I forget is it Dom? What's his name? The one who does
Dom Diamond, is it? Is that him?
I can't remember his surname. It does these sort of reveals of people who cheat other people.
Yeah.
And he did one on the railways. Basically, they stopped off in a university town, and they got a whole load of people out to make sure people had got the right tickets. And something like about 25% of people had either not bothered buying a ticket or had bought an inappropriate ticket for the distance they wanted to go. And I was quite shocked that it was that higher figure.
But the trouble is, I will say, if you have ever tried recently to purchase a train ticket,
yes,
it is a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, because it's become much more complex, hasn't it? Because there's so many different companies now, and it depends on how far ahead you're booking the ticket, and yeah, it has become incredibly complex. Because there are online tools for actually getting the best price, and sometimes the best price if you're going a fair way in the UK, the best price sometimes is buying multiple tickets.
Yeah, well,
so rather than buying one ticket to get from A to B, you buy 15 different tickets to take you short journeys, and you actually stay on the same train, which is a bit bonkers.
It's a bit bonkers. Anyway,
It is, and you end up with 15 different tickets for the little short journeys, and it ends up saving you money. So, yeah, it is a bit of a nightmare. Perhaps the smart tickets might start pushing it in the right direction. Who knows?
Yeah, apparently 22% of journeys in 2018 were made using tickets which were bought online. That's not really surprising. In fact, I'm surprised it's only 22%.
Good grief, it says at the bottom here that there are more than 50 million different types of train ticket across the railway, and smart tickets will do little to solve that confusion. That's the Labour Shadow Rail Minister talking.
The government and the industry are deluding themselves if they think they are anywhere meeting their own targets for smart ticketing. But there we go. I'm sure he's got an axe to grind.
Yeah, it sounds like it, doesn't it?
Perhaps he has a bad time getting commuting to Westminster. On the plus side, paper equating to the distance from London to Edinburgh and back was saved in the first 2 months of 2019 due to paperless tickets.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot
That's
of
good.
tickets, isn't it?
It is.
Smart ticketing will also make compensation for delayed or cancelled journeys easier.
Yeah, because they've just changed the rules about it, haven't they? So that you're entitled to it automatically, as it were.
Well, and the other one, which was in the Slack room, wasn't it? Was Mac Jim, poor Mac Jim, ended up stranded because something had happened. He ended up stranded at Edinburgh, or was it Glasgow?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
And
he has a really long journey to work as well. I couldn't believe it when he said.
Yeah, by bus, 2 hours by bus.
I feel your pain, Mac Jim.
Yeah, but he'd gone to Glasgow. It was the weekend, I think. He went to Glasgow because he likes to go to Glasgow and do to wander around taking photographs. And on the way back, something had gone wrong. The train broke down, or something, and he ended up stranded. And he said, "I don't know what I'm going to do." And I said, "You could go find somebody and tell them they have to get you a taxi." Because they do.
He did eventually.
Yeah, he did. And they provided him with a taxi because they screwed up. It doesn't seem like a huge countrywide rollout.
No.
Recent upgrades at Waterloo, Edinburgh, Waverley, Gatwick Airport, followed by readers and computer software at Blackfriars, Watford Junction, City Thames Link, London Bridge, East Croydon and Shenfield. But whatever, I don't know. Overdue, definitely.
Yeah, it'll only take place in London because it's the only place in the UK that exists.
Of course. Well, they've done it. They've got Edinburgh. Look, Edinburgh.
Oh, in Edinburgh. Sorry. Yes. Oh.
So Mac Jim might be a little bit more in luck. He might be able to have a smart ticket.
Indeed.
That
won't stop them breaking down or
no,
whatever.
It will not stop any of the other shenanigans. Right. I tell you what. Let's take a short break, Nick, and then we'll come back and do the tiresome security and privacy stories.
Yeah, T is calling.
Yep, okay. So, over to John, and I believe he has a couple of speakers. So, take it away, John.
Nemo's Hardware Store is delighted to introduce 2 new speakers from our friends at Audio Engine. The website is audioengineusa.com, AUDIOENGINEUSA, audioengineusa.com. The brand newest speaker that just arrived today is called the 512 portable speaker. It's a compact speaker, sort of a large lozenge shape, comes in forest green or black. We have the black one here for review that you will see on the Audio Engine website from the links in our show notes for this episode of Essential Apple and Nemo's Hardware Store. Price in the U.S. is $169. It's the first portable speaker that Audio Engine has released, and it's a micro powerhouse. It's about the length of my hand, and it's a little bit bigger around than my hand can grab. So it's like a giant stubby sausage. Very simple controls, easy to pair, huge Bluetooth range, very powerful, massive bass, room-filling sound for a portable speaker. This is definitely a premium product at a premium price that you will cherish and have for years and will be the envy of everybody who says, whoa, where's that sound coming from? That little black thing or that little green thing? I do not believe it. So we'll have more to report on this and also over at mymac.com, where we have reviewed all of the Audio Engine products over the past several years. They don't put stuff out very often, so when they do, they support it and they want it to be really good for a long time. They've also released a new version of their A2 Plus. It's called the A2 Plus Wireless Speaker System. This is a powered speaker that stands on your desk or in your living room or in your office or in your studio or your classroom or your lab or wherever you want to be in your bedroom. It's $239 in the US, and it's an update and an upgrade. They've improved the sound, and they have added wireless Bluetooth to their already excellent A2 Plus system. So this is a workhorse speaker that's very, very powerful, very clean, incredibly strong on the mid-range and the treble. I've been using this in my workshop to demo for several weeks, and people are just floored by it. This has been around for about 3 weeks, and I've been demoing it every week. People are very impressed. Comes in black, red, or white. That red is really stunning. We have the white ones for review. So do your research at audioengineusa.com. And if you're in the market for a premium speaker, whether it's a pair, sits in one place, and whether it's Bluetooth or wired, is going to be a masterpiece, massive sound, the A2 wireless speaker system is exactly what you need. But if you want to carry it around, take it camping, hiking, wherever you want, go any place, the new 512, the 512 portable is definitely worth considering. So a little bit less than $200 for the portable, a little bit more than $200 for the desktop powered speakers. You can't go wrong with any product from Audio Engine. These are the speakers that I use personally and give my Nemo's hardware store a recommendation.
Thank you, John. Two excellent speakers there, and all the links, as ever, in the show notes. I haven't mentioned this for a while, but we do have an Amazon affiliate link. There's a big red button on the website. If you click that and then buy things from Amazon, we get a small kickback. And so if you do that, thank you very much. There we go. On to the security and privacy section, Nick. The depressing part. The depressing part of the show, usually. Okay. Well, we won't spend too long on these because we'll just depress everybody. But Firefox expands anti-tracking features with browser fingerprint blocking. Link here to The Verge.
Jolly good.
Jolly good.
Yeah, it's a good thing. So, a reminder for people that fingerprint blocking is browser fingerprinting, rather, is where they use the details of your computer and of your browser to actually say, okay, we can sort of wheedle down. It's not that person.
Yep.
It's not these 300 people because they're using a different browser or they've got a different screen size or.
Yep.
So they can sort of identify you without you actually giving your personal information.
Yep. Well, they can basically identify your device and then follow you around using that.
Yes.
Andy J had quite a lot to say about that when he did the cybersecurity special. And I don't have the links to hand, but there was he had several links to sites where you could check how fingerprintable you actually are. I'll dig those out and put them in the show notes underneath this story, I think.
Sounds a good idea.
Right. Well, I don't suppose we. This one also particularly targets blocking crypto miners, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So that you don't.
Which is another good thing.
Don't get crypto jacked. Cryptocurrency miners can be explicitly blocked. Firefox is testing a new anti-tracking feature which will prevent sites from being able to fingerprint your browser and thus track you. In addition, the browser will now explicitly block cryptocurrency mining scripts attempting to hijack your computer in order to mine digital currency. Currently only available in the nightly and beta test builds. There we go. And then it goes on to explain what these things are. And new features are part of a broader move by Mozilla to increase user privacy. Last year, Firefox 63 introduced enhanced tracking protection, although this is turned off by default. So if you might want to go, if you use Firefox or Firefox, evolved browsers like Clicks, you may want to check that the anti-tracking is turned on. There we go.
That's jolly good. I do use Firefox a little for logging on to work. I like to use a different browser to what I use for everything else. So I
Yep.
use it specifically just for going through our VPN into work. So
Always good to have more than one browser.
it is.
For lots of reasons. If you get a site that doesn't want to play ball with your favourite. For what it's worth, Clicks is built on Firefox. I don't know what version it's currently on. I know it's behind the Firefox numbers, obviously.
Uh-huh.
But there we go. It says, go into the Privacy and Security tab of the Preferences menu, select Custom with Content Blocking, and select the boxes next to Cryptominers and Fingerprinters. As I say, currently only available in nightly builds or beta versions, but it's coming. Be coming soon to Firefox and Firefox-based browsers, I would assume.
Well done, Firefox.
Well done, Mozilla, as ever. Yes. Mozilla seem to have had a bit of a resurgence because obviously they, when they first launched Firefox, it was a kind of attack on the Internet Explorer hegemony of the time, and then it sort of fell behind, didn't it? Firefox did get rather bloated and sluggish and fell out of favour until they revamped it with the Firefox Quantum. And now Mozilla and Firefox are having a bit of resurgence. I guess all this privacy concern is probably helping Mozilla to push their agenda.
Yes.
Okay. What else have we got? Oh, mentioning Internet Explorer. A 0-day exploit makes files vulnerable to hacks on Windows PCs. Well, as we all know, you should not be using Internet Explorer. Even Microsoft say you should not be using Internet Explorer. It's only for compatibility use. But there you go.
But a lot of people out there will be using it because it was what was on their machine.
Yeah.
And as far as they're concerned, that is the internet. So
yep. So I'm pretty sure nobody listening to this show is using Internet Explorer. But if you needed
it's highly unlikely.
If you needed another reason not to use Internet Explorer, there you go. What else? Amazon's Alexa isn't just AI. Thousands of humans are listening. This was on The Verge. As you were saying in the break, Nick, this seems to have garnered a huge amount of publicity. And as you said, is that really a surprise? I wasn't surprised.
No, I mean I've tried asking Alexa some things. Oh, sorry.
I don't know that one.
Sorry, I shouldn't. The A word, the A lady.
So here we go. Amazon's Alexa isn't just AI. Thousands of humans are listening. One of the only ways to improve Alexa is to have human beings check it for errors. And this doesn't surprise me in the least.
I agree entirely. I have seen things added to the A lady where I've asked a question one time and she doesn't know what I'm talking about, and I've asked the question later on and she does. So I don't think that's an algorithm sorting that out. Someone's listened to it and thought, "Oh, people are going to want to know that."
Well,
I think we ought to add that in.
Yeah. What the company doesn't tell you explicitly, highlighted by an in-depth investigation from Bloomberg, apparently, one of the only and often the best way Alexa improves over time is by having human beings listen to recordings of your voice requests. Blah 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 blah.
Gosh, I bet they listen to. I bet they listen to an awful lot of it. I'll try again. I bet they listen to an awful lot of expletives.
Concerns about how AI is trained as it becomes ever more pervasive force in daily life will only continue to raise alarms. Well, in this case, the process is known as data annotation. Well, realistically, what they're saying is human beings are, listening to. I assume, I don't know how they can't listen to all of them.
No.
I think Amazon here have explicitly said humans only listen to a tiny proportion. I suspect what they actually get flagged are things that where the service is unable to respond.
Well, that's right, and quite often the A lady will say, give you an answer that is nothing to do with what you've asked. And at the end of it, she'll say, "Does that answer your question?" and you can say yes or no. And so presumably it's some of those that they're looking at because the A lady's actually given you some information that you didn't ask for, and therefore they can listen to what you've said to make it better. So no, it doesn't surprise me that they're listening in. People are infinitely better than computers at understanding language.
Yeah.
And inference and innuendo and all those other bits of language that tend to get lost when all you're doing is parsing the words.
Here we say the company claims it has a strict technical and operational safeguards and a zero tolerance policy for the abuse of the system. Employees are not given access to the identity of the person engaging in the voice request. Any information of that variety is treated with high confidentiality and protected by multi-factor authentication. Blah, 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 blah.
Well, that sounds good.
Critics of this approach have been ringing alarm bells about this for some time. When Amazon makes a mistake and accidentally sends recordings to the wrong individual or reveals it's storing recordings for months or even years. Okay, well, there's a risk. There's a risk with it. It's just as simple as that. I'm not saying people shouldn't be paying attention to this. But what does he say here? How Alexa Learns was published in the Scientific American earlier this month, where he detailed how the goal for this type of large-scale machine learning will always be to reduce the amount of tedious human labour required. In recent AI research, supervised learning has predominated. That's basically where people listen to it and correct it. Today, commercial AI systems generate far more customer interactions than we could label by hand. The only way to continue the torrid, that's an interesting word to use, isn't it? Torrid rate of improvement that commercial AI has delivered so far is to reorient ourselves towards semi-supervised, weakly supervised and unsupervised learning. Our systems need to learn how to improve themselves. So there we go. For now, however, Amazon may need real people with knowledge of human language and culture to pass Alexa interactions and make sense of them. This uncomfortable reality means there are people out there, sometimes as far away as India and Romania, who are listening to you talk to a disembodied AI in your living room, bedroom or bathroom. That's the cost of AI convenience, at least in Amazon's eyes.
Yeah, all I can say is poor them.
Yeah, really.
They're having to listen to me, dearie me.
Well, despite all my reluctance, my wife has purchased an Echo Dot, and it arrived. And if anybody was listening to my son experiment with it, for them, I can assure you, because he was looking on YouTube for all the things you could do to Alexa to cause havoc.
Yes.
Like ask it the answer to 52 factorial, where it started reading out the numbers. It's like, Siri, shut up. Not Siri. Alexa, shut up. There we go. And all sorts of other weird things. He was trying to get it to respond to parrot sketch quotes and Star Trek quotes. And he'd found some site where some guy had dug out all sorts of useless stuff that you could.
I must admit, it's one of the things I quite like about these automated voice systems is just occasionally they'll come out with something that is really amusing and that takes you completely by surprise.
Well,
I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I have sometimes laughed out loud at some of the things she said.
Well, apparently, according to the YouTube thing my son was listening to, there's a lot of stuff pre-programmed in.
Yes, of course there is, yeah.
So Star Trek and Star Wars type references and Monty Python references and things like that. If you one that he said was, if you say this parrot is dead or this is a dead parrot, something like that, she will reply with, no, it's only pining for the fields.
Yes.
Well, there we go. No, I'm not really surprised by that, and the fact that Bloomberg have dug up, quote unquote, the secret that people are listening to Amazon recordings is no big surprise to me. And by the way, don't anybody think that Google and Samsung and Microsoft and anybody else producing such a thing are not doing the same, because they have to, basically.
Yes.
That's at the moment, we haven't yet made a system smart enough to teach itself.
That's right. We were talking about AI last week, weren't we? And we were saying how that general AI is not with us yet.
No,
so.
far off. What was I listening? I was listening to something I was listening to something earlier on where they were talking about AI and machine learning, and the guy was saying that actually even the best AI is what you might call autistic, in that it might be able to be, completely focused on one thing and be very good at that, but that's all it can do.
Yeah.
It's useless at everything
that's
else.
a fair comment, actually. Yeah.
It might be good at recognizing images or passing, speech, or I don't know, controlling a temperature valve or whatever, but it doesn't do anything else.
But completely useless at turning the kettle on.
Exactly. Exactly. There we go. Security flaws in WPA3 protocol let attackers hack Wi-Fi passwords. Hacker News. I wasn't even aware that there was a WPA3 at the moment, but there you go. There is, apparently. Apparently, it's been just a year since the launch of the next generation Wi-Fi security standard WPA3. Researchers have unveiled several serious vulnerabilities in the wireless security protocol, which could allow attackers to recover the password of the Wi-Fi network. This obviously is on Hacker News. The vulnerability is called Dragon Blood, apparently, because you have to have a super cool name.
That's right. It's no good doing it if you haven't got a cool name.
No. Apparently, this is because the part which does the handshakes is codenamed Dragonfly. Concretely, attackers can then read information that WPA3 was assumed to safely encrypt. This can be abused to steal sensitive transmitted information such as credit card numbers, passwords, chat messages, and so on. The research paper dubbed Dragon Blood detailed two types of design flaws. I'm not going to go through the whole of this. If you're interested, follow the link. There is also links here to some tools from GitHub which can test vulnerabilities. Dragon Drain, a tool which can test which extend an access point is vulnerable to DOS attacks. Dragon Time, a tool to perform timing attacks. Dragon Force, an experimental tool to take the information to recover from the timing attacks.
I mean, the fact is, the vast majority of us probably haven't even got WPA3 devices. So
no. And one of the attacks they describe here is what's called a downgrade attack, and that is that WPA3 devices can fall back to WPA2 if
right.
And WPA2 apparently is no longer considered secure because people can break it. So one of the attacks is to force your WPA3 device to fall back to WPA2 and then attack that. So there we are. Luckily, on the plus side here, it does say apparently a small change, a minor change to the protocol could prevent most of these attacks. So it's quite likely that whatever small changes need changing will get done. I mean, it's a relatively new protocol. So There we go. And yes, as I say, I didn't even know WPA3 was a thing. So there we go. Microsoft webmail services were breached by hackers with a support agent's credentials on Digital Trends. Not much to say about that, really, is there? It says here, Outlook.com. No, I don't want a cookie, thank you. Hackers broke into Outlook.com using workers' credentials, Microsoft says. Outlook.com, MSN and Hotmail addresses for months.
No, hold on a minute. Even that sentence in itself doesn't make any sense. You're not breaking in. You're using some valid accounts.
Yes.
Of someone. So you're not breaking in. You're just stealing credentials and using those.
Yes, exactly. I suspect, no doubt, that somebody, a valid customer support agent was spearphished, probably.
Yes.
And they have, been using those for months. So compromised, yes. Microsoft's web-based email services, including Outlook.com, MSN, and Hotmail addresses. In an email sent to affected users, so if you haven't had an email, you're probably safe. Hackers were possibly able to access email addresses, subject lines, folder labels, and the names of other email addresses the user contacted. The content of emails, including attachments, were not compromised, nor were login credentials. They compromised the credentials of a customer support agent. Microsoft have identified the credentials and disabled them. Affected users may receive more spam, more phishing attempts, and affected users should stay vigilant and are advised to change their passwords even though these were not compromised, because hackers may be able to use the addresses for identity theft or otherwise credential stuffing.
I had a phishing email last night. I don't get that many. I must admit, not that many make their way through to my inbox, but a Virgin Media one saying that they couldn't take my payment for some reason, and all I had to do was click on this link.
I got some very bizarre ones.
It was reasonably convincing. It had got proper Virgin Media logos on it and things, but the fact that it said "Dear Customer" to undisclosed recipients, you think, well, why would you do that?
Yeah, exactly. I got some very weird ones to the Essential Apple email address the other day, which would I suddenly got a whole batch of about 5, all looking completely different and all saying your email account will be shut down if you don't verify. It's like, really, none of these even look like they come from an email company, let alone
Having said that, I mean, there are a lot of people out there who just don't know, do they? And they get the things and start worrying about it, and
it would be highly unlikely for Sudo Mail to be emailing me telling me they're shutting down my email servers, as they're no more than effectively a proxy. But there we go. That So there you go. Microsoft webmail services were breached by hackers. Bad,
not good.
Bad news. Although in that case, probably not really Microsoft's fault to some extent there. I think. Obviously, we don't know how they got hold of these credentials, but I'm sure it was by nefarious purposes. And pretty much to finish up, I think that's probably all of it. The New York Times has a piece here, which is a slideshow, which you were looking at in the break, Nick. Time to panic about privacy. An opinion piece. It says, click here to advance. Privacy is a thing we say we want. You get mad when it's invaded or mishandled, say when Equifax leaks your credit info or when your nudes get shown on 4chan or when your health data is held to ransom. Okay. Privacy is something a lot of people are happy to trade away for the slightest reward. We claim to want it, companies claim to provide it, and neither side is really honest. So we all accept you don't actually have any privacy online. And then he goes into the latest innovations are elevating questions of privacy into much larger social, moral, political, and economic issues. Digital home security, they don't seem particularly novel. You wish to be alerted if a bad guy comes to your door, but not when your neighbour walks past. You get a camera which scans and remembers faces. This is convenient. But what do you do when it spots someone suspicious? What happens if concerned neighbours start sharing these around the neighbourhood social network? What if law enforcement gets in on the act and every new face is checked against a sex offender register or maybe immigration or customs enforcement? Is this okay? Ring, one of the doorbell cam companies, has a creepy neighbourhood watch social network and has filed a patent for creating a database of suspicious persons. Right? You don't wish to profile people, you just want to be safe. You like cameras because you can get alerted when your kids come home and you can watch your dog. Isn't that cute? But where does all this data go? Can your abusive spouse get hold of it? Your internet company, the smart home, is a treasure trove of intimate data. Domestic abusers use smart home devices to spy on their victims. Congress passed rules in 2017 allowing broadband companies to track your digital data. You didn't sign up for that. You're just worried about package thieves. Isn't it your right to monitor your front door and make sure your toilet paper is not being stolen? Yes, but have you ever considered the privacy of the worker who is delivering your toilet paper? Thanks to doorbell cameras, delivery drivers can be watched and tracked on the job. Is that okay? It's about more than doorbells,
It depends on whether you think they're in a public place, because if they're in a public place, you don't get much choice over whether you. I mean, particularly in the UK.
No, that is true. But anyway, basically.
Yeah, I know what it's saying. It's saying how far do you allow privacy to go? Yeah, interesting.
Every time you buy a new device or service which trades in private information, your DNA, your location, your activity, you are gambling on an uncertain, unprotected future. In the West, we are building a surveillance state no less totalitarian than the Chinese government, except China is doing it through its government, and we are doing it through corporations and consumer products in the absence of regulation recognising stakes at hand. It's time to start caring about this mess. It's time to panic. That's his take on that. Raises some interesting points, which I don't think we really have time to go into now, Nick.
No, indeed. There's quite a lot of moral dilemmas in there, aren't there?
There are indeed. There we go. Worth thinking about. Yeah. And just to top off, we've been going quite a long time. We have Worth a Chirp. Now, I came upon this via Stephen Sinofsky, who posted it on Twitter. It's on Vintage Apple, and it's a Byte magazine, July 1989. And you can download a PDF of the full 360 pages of Byte magazine. This is from the days when half the page count was adverts. And a lot of them double-page spreads to boot, by the way. If you remember that period of computing, go download it and take a browse.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. Those were the days, mate. And there is the cover. The cover article is the top 12 GUIs, being 1989. This is before. I think Windows 1 is one of the.
Oh wow!
One of the GUIs. Mentioned, and several others that you have to be of a certain age to even have heard of, to be fair. It's an interesting read in itself, Nick, because it's from the days when nobody was really sure what was going to become top GUI.
No, that's right. And you had to have a lot of money if you wanted a computer, it seems.
Oh, yes.
They weren't cheap.
No, one of the ads I spotted was, a 386 power for only $3,950.
Yes, it's got some 286s here. I'm just looking at it now. $2,295.
There you go. Yeah. So stop.
Those were the days.
That's it. So stop your moaning. Stop your moaning, people. If you weren't around then, it's an interesting look. And if you were, well, go revel in the nostalgia, indeed. Right, well, I think that's enough, Nick. I think we've filled up quite enough time for a show.
Indeed. People will be getting bored.
Yeah, well, yeah, we might have to edit it down a little bit because it's gone.
Yeah, it might be a good idea.
But it was quite a, considering it's a quiet week and we started off with this bloody no news, we've gone rather long. Anyway, so Nick, would you like to do your usual thing?
Oh, yes. You can find me occasionally on this show and on Bart Bouchot's Let's Talk Apple. And if you want to contact me, you can contact me through Twitter. I'm Spligosh on there, SPLIGOSH.
Very good. I am, of course, on the Twitters as @Serenak, and that's SERENAK. The show is Essential Apple. All the stuff is over on the website at essentialapple.com. And I think that's probably about it. Thanks to everybody in the Slack room. Thanks to all our Patreon supporters, of course. And I won't be doing a show next week because it's Easter Sunday. And even if I wanted to, I'm sure nobody else would be available. So no show next week, back in a fortnight. And that's all for now. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Essential Apple podcast, and I'd like to say if you enjoy the show and would like to support us, feel free to go over to the website essentialapple.com and you will find links to both Patreon and the Pinecast Tips Jar, where you can make a donation towards the costs of the show, or even if you're really keen, you could set up a recurring payment. And thank you very, very much to all the people who already do support us. We really do appreciate you very much indeed. This show is, of course, part of the My Mac podcasting network, where you can find a variety of other shows like the My Mac podcast with Guy and Gaz, the G-Men, Tech Fan with Tim and David, the Nintendo Club podcast, the geekiest show ever, the Three Geeky Ladies, Bart Bouchots and his wonderful Let's Talk Apple, and possibly some more that I've forgotten. So why not go over to mymac.com, take a look at the available podcasts, and take a listen.
So it is never late, Fred Beggins, or is he early? He arrives precisely when he means to, and usually listening to the Tech Fan Podcast with Tim Robertson and David Cohen, part of the Stoplight Network.
This has been the Essential Apple Podcast. Goodbye and thank you for listening.